So I was thinking for this show, it should be sponsored by that new alcoholic water. I mean, really, like this show is sponsored by that alcoholic water. Because I mean, seriously, we've decided to put alcohol in every motherfucking thing, and now we have alcoholic water. So you don't get the show. It's sponsored by alcoholic water. And you know what?
Either that or Old School Four Loco before they bitched it out.
Yeah. And then next up, it's going to be sponsored by alcoholic air. You know why? Because fuck it.
Back with a new show deep in the basement. Professionalism turned off, screw the ad placement. Skit comedy trolling, plate full of dough. People get offended, you don't get the show.
Alright, we're back with another show. I'm Jay LaRock with Randy. What's up?
What's up, my friend?
Alright, so I got a message. You know what? How about this? How about we're gonna start with some controversial shit. How about anyone that has a problem with gaming, that doesn't salute to the flag of gaming, get the fuck out of gaming? Because that seems to be the theme going around nowadays, right? Like if you don't salute to the flag, get out the country for some reason. So how about this? If you don't salute to gaming, get the fuck out of gaming. You think we can draw a parallel to that?
I think I could agree to that.
I don't know. Look, I don't want to, or maybe I do, depending, because I really don't care. Just quickly, what do you think about this whole, saluting to the flag and stuff? Because let's face it. See, here's what people don't want to talk about. How many times have you been to sporting events where people are drinking beer, talking, flipping through their phones when the flag, when the anthem is being played or something? And now people are yelling at Colin Kaepernick, and I just get the feeling that if it was a different person or a different reason, people would be up in arms. I mean, what do you think about this situation?
I mean, God, it's getting to the point where, like, people are willing to, like, harp on things that are really, like, it's important, but it's not really that important. There's way more stuff going on in the world that really we should pay attention to. Then, this dude's freaking kneeling down during the national anthem and shit like that. Like, if you sit there and you look at it, like, people are saying he's being disrespectful and blah, blah, blah. Like, he has a right to protest however he wants. We should not have a right to judge him do that. It shouldn't matter what we think of what it is. Like, he has a right to protest. This is how he's protesting, and let it be. If you sit there and you look at it, like, they've actually interviewed people, soldiers and stuff like that went to war and said, you know what? He has the right to do that. That's what I went and fought, in Afghanistan and all that. It's to defend a person's right to have their own opinion. Like, if we sit there and you think about it, if we start taking that away from people, like, it's not what the flag itself symbolizes. You know what I mean? So, I mean, is it crazy that people are harping on that? Yeah, it kind of is. But, I mean, it's so nuts. Like, if you look at it, there's a lot more other people out there. Like, they had an entire high school football team in Kansas City, I believe. I just read an article that the whole team kneeled down during the national anthem and stuff like that. But it's like, it's this crazy, like, thing. Like, one of the things that I remember seeing that was, like, really, really interesting, that show that they have on ESPN, where it's that one commentator, the one white guy and the one black guy.
Oh, First Take?
First Take. And he was sitting there, like, I guess the white dude, like, said something about, like, this whole thing about, like the Black Lives Matter thing and blah, blah, blah. And he sits there and he went on this, like, it wasn't really a tirade, but just the way that he said it was, like, was so well put together. It was, like, really interesting. He sits there and he's like, look, if you look at me, I'm well off. He says, but how does the world see me as a black man? Okay? And he says, now, if you sit there and you look at the events that are going on, there's people out there getting killed for trying to sell CDs, for trying to do things that are normal. He's like, but these people are getting killed. Why? Because of the color of their skin. He says, look what happened down in Florida. You had a white guy, naked, stab a dude 2 times and was eating his face when the police showed up. And all they did is they tased him 7 times before they finally subdued him. You know, he says, where is the wrong and the right in that situation where you had a guy sitting out in front of a gas station selling CDs and 2 cops gunned him down, and here's a dude that stabbed a guy 3 times and was eating his face, and they tased him 7 times before they subdued him. He's like, if I was that cop and I showed up there and I saw a dude with 3 stab marks in him and his face getting eaten off, he's like, I would have emptied all the clips on them. Like, me, myself. Like, but he didn't exactly say that, but, like, to his point, it's like, you know what, he has a point there. Like, they sat there and they tased that dude to get him off, and it took, I mean, I saw the video, it took, like, 5 cops to pull this dude off of that guy. You know? And it's like, if I would have been a cop and showed up, I was like, yo, that nigga eating his face. Fuck that, I'm pulling my gun out. Like, forget the taser. You know?
I just think, what I don't understand is that why people just go immediately to kicking people out the country. That just seems like such an extreme. It's like, you know, you have people who talk about collecting guns in case that they have to fight the government. And there isn't anything that's even going on, and you just say, oh, look, this politician might pass a bill that might do something I don't like. Oh, let me get these extra bullets. You know, you get someone who, you know, you get someone that comes into office who you don't like, and the sales of bullets go up, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, war might. You could talk about things like that, and that's okay. But someone kneels at an anthem, and you want to kick that person out. But other people who talk about a potential war against the government that they're preparing for, you don't kick those people out. Does anyone talk about that story? I don't understand, but
that's the big thing, that like it's so out there that it's just ridiculous. Like, oh, there's freaking cities in the Middle East that are getting bombed and innocent people are dying, but this dude's kneeling down during the freaking the national anthem. Let's freaking pull out the pitchforks and light them on fire.
Right. Even if you don't agree with him, like, I could understand if the conversation is, I don't agree with this guy doing it, but I just don't understand where you leap from I don't agree with him to kick him out and he hates America and like, why is this such a leap? It's like if someone says something that's even like slightly against you, he's a Nazi. It's like, man, we really need to create some space, you know, between one thing and the other. Yeah. And, you know, I don't want to go into a big tirade about this, but one of the reasons I bring this up and why I say the thing about gaming is, look, so we had a interview a while back, because we did a lot of interviews, and we interviewed Derek Smart. And he interviewed him? Oh, yeah. Oh. And, you know, he gets a lot of heat because, you know, he had comments about Star Citizen. And, you know, like, most of the people are on the side of Star Citizen. Personally, I like Star Citizen, and a lot of people here at Obsolete Gamer like Star Citizen. There's a small community that doesn't like Star Citizen and didn't like some things in the Kickstarter. And Derek Smart had opinions on Star Citizen. And, of course, ooh, man, he got a lot of hate. So the way we do interviews, we interview anybody, and we're going to come clean, and we're just going to be like, hey, this guy did work, go check out his work, things like that. Now, it's funny because with all other people that we've interviewed, sometimes it'll go quiet. We'll interview all types of people from the gaming community, and there'll hardly be any comments or anything on that. We'll interview people who've done great work. But what people want to do mainly is attack and go after people. So, of course, with him, people go and they attack and they say, oh, look at this that he did. Oh, this was terrible and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, because of that, his view count and his comments blow up. Like, still today, you go and you'll see people just fight and argue over him. Oh, this sucks. Go look at this. Go look at that. It's so terrible. And it's like, I mean, I don't care. You guys have the freedom to post whatever you want. I'm not going to read it, and I don't care. That's your right. But it's funny because obviously I'm pretty sure that anything that he does in the future, those of you that don't like him are probably going to go out and downvote it. And what's sad about that is that no matter how well it may be, you probably will downvote it just because you don't like him. And let's say if it has some bugs in it, you probably will even make it worse. So let's say if he comes out with a game and it's, let's say, 3-star, you'll probably say it's 1-star because you hate the guy. Now, the question is that you could have the other side of that, and that's where our story comes from. You have Digital Homicide, where they come out with a game, and judging from the way it looks and what people say, not really up to snuff here. So people posted things on it that weren't that kind. Now, look, we're gamers. It's the internet, but some of y'all go too far, and you posted things, and there were things like on Steam. And in the end, the developers created a lawsuit going after not only the people that wrote things on Steam, but a critic, Jim Sterling.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, in the end, Valve decides, like, hey, look, there's one thing to maybe want to come out, maybe you want to have an interview, maybe you want to rebut something with someone, go up and say, hey, my game is good, here's why. No, they want to lash out with a lawsuit. I mean, millions of dollars they're asking for in damages. So Valve said enough of this. So they decided to remove Digital Homicide's game from Steam in response to this lawsuit. And I just wanted to get your opinion, Randy, on this whole fiasco.
So the thing that's funny is, like, I saw the story of, like, hey, Digital Homicide sues like hundreds of Steam users based on like negative reviews for their game. So I started reading into this, and what was interesting is then I found out like the whole thing, because like I've watched Jim Sterling's stuff, and I think like he's an interesting like critic of video games, where he's the type of person, like, he will just flat out tell you, like, hey, if the game sucks, the game sucks. If it's a game's good, he's like, yeah, these things are good. And he's gone as far as, like, he'll point out stuff, like, things that they'll do in games that are, like, really, really interesting. He'll point them out. Even if, let's say, it's something that he doesn't, like, per se, like, it doesn't appeal to him, he'll still say, like, hey, I'll give it to these people. Like, they did a really interesting thing with this game with X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. So the funny thing is, like, I've been watching him for a while. I hadn't really watched a lot of his old stuff, but I had heard, like, he had been going through, like, legal things with, like, apparently there was a developer that was suing him and blah, 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 blah. Turns out it was Digital Homicide. So the whole thing was he played, I forgot what game it was of theirs, but it was literally, like, a game that when you look at his video, he, like, criticizes it. He's like, yep, like, this thing just, like, it's running, but it doesn't seem like it's like a complete game. He's like, it is an indie game and blah, 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 and I can understand you don't have as big. And like when you look at his critique of the original game itself, like I've seen him review games that, let me tell you, you want to talk about him tearing into them, like he tore into them. He did not tear into this game as much as I've seen him tear into other games, And it was funny because he's sitting there pointing stuff out and this and that. This seems weird, blah, 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 like, and he does this thing. And then what's funny is Digital Homicide's response is they made a video of that where they basically took his entire video and then like put TypeScript over it as if it was him saying it. So it's this crazy like thing. And then like I dug into looking through YouTube. There was after he came out with that video, he actually had an interview with one of the two co-owners, and like them trying to like defend the game, like saying different things like, oh well, that wasn't the original schedule we had, like as our games have been coming out, they were supposed to get progressively better. And he's like, so wait, you guys changed the order in which the games came out, so that's why this was not as good as this other one that you say, and blah, blah, blah. And then, like, the guy ends up just going into this tirade of, like, this is why, you're an asshat, and like, to Jim Sterling. And Jim Sterling's just sitting there listening to him, just, like, laughing. He's like, look, like, I'm a critic of video games. I basically point stuff out. And, like, the guy's just, like, going on and on and on and on. And it was just, like, crazy to see this. And then the fact that, like, reading into this whole, like, yeah, he literally, like, these people went to a court and got a lawsuit rolling with 100 different people's names. Granted, they don't have their real names; they just have their Steam usernames. But it's just crazy. Like, when you look at how much they're, like, suing for, it's insane. Like, they're saying that, oh, because of these negative reviews, it impacted their sales of the game. And that was, like, the initial thing that, like, they were suing Jim Sterling for was, you know, defamation and, like, their you know, recuperation of losses due to, like, this bad review. And it's like, what?
Yeah, and that's another thing to keep in mind. Like, for anyone who is not sure about this, like, first, this is an indie game. And yes, an indie game can end up making a lot of money. But, I mean, you got to remember, it's not like you can just walk in here and say, hey, you know what? I'm pretty sure that this indie game was going to end up making as much money as a AAA title. So it's like right away, it looks like, hey, is this going to be a cash cow? Second, I mean, the most important part is it's not like this guy came out and just started right away trying to be an asshat. It's not like, hey, look at this piece of shit game, blah, 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 piece of shit. It's not one of those type of shows. This person has, you know, a record of breaking down games. And a lot of gamers talk about wanting to have, like, real reviews. There's so much gamers saying, hey, I'm tired of the IGNs out there giving 90s, 95s, and 100s to all these games. And it seems like they're bought. Now, I'm not saying that they are, but a lot of people feel that way. So they want to say, hey, I want people to give the truth. And if you're going out there and saying, look at this, why isn't this done? How many games come out and then it's patch? I mean, maybe something's going to be exactly perfect when it comes out. But, man, when you had, like, The Division come out and it's broken, when you had Arkham Knight come out and you have all these broken, you know, parts of the game for, like, such a large segment, and then people are like, oh, well, we'll see about it. And then you had some people throwing it under the rug and then other people trying to investigate. When you find a reviewer who tells it like it is, Trump, and then is honest with you and breaks it down, then you're going to be like, hey, I appreciate that. And then the response is someone's going to sue him for it. And I mean, if it's bad, it's bad. And you want someone who's going to tell you that. You don't want those people to be sued and thrown away, because then what you're going to be left with? Everyone saying, hey, 9 out of 9, 5 stars. No, that's not what we want as gamers.
And that's the thing that, like, I liked about seeing his videos is he, like, is frank about like, even his No Man's Sky review, like, he sat there and he, like, right away his, like, hey, this is, you know, not what we were promised, blah, blah, blah. Like, he tore into different things about the game. And in the end, he sat there and he said, like, for me, this is not a game for me. You know, he's like, there's people out there that are going to like it and there's people that are going to hate it. You know, and, like, you look at his thing, and then, like, the big thing about it is that, like, because he did that video and he was like, you know, he very much, like, tore into it from his own opinion of, like, I don't like this, I don't like that, like that previous show that we did where he had all this, like, hate for it. And then he basically started, like, he released 2 videos. I mean, he never intended to release those 2 other videos. One that basically talked about how, like, hey, these are, like, the fans are what they're saying, blah, 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 and that you have to look at what we were promised and what we were given, you know? And then when the, like, real, like, the fanboys, like, the ones that were sending out the death threats and shit, once those guys started attacking, he was like, okay, I didn't want to make this video, but y'all pushed me to the line. He's like, I'm going to talk about No Man's Sky, you know, fanboys, and not the fanboys that defend their game and say, hey, they like it. No, I'm going to talk about the cancer that is those fanboys that send out the death threats and all. And then he, like, pointed out this, like, sect. And he's like, I'm not saying all these people are like that. I'm just saying this small group of people. And it's interesting where, like, when you look at this from the developer side, where the developer is going to such extremes to quiet people and reviewers and all that about their games, because they're like, oh, yeah, obviously, if I'm a developer, I want my game to sell. But at the same time, if I'm not putting a product out there that is deserving of that money, I myself, like me personally, like I would not expect if I release something and it wasn't up to what people would want it to be, I would not expect to sell one copy of it, you know?
Yeah.
And
and the
that's
thing,
well, I was gonna say, and I think that's the thing is that they, like, it's tough to develop a game. I mean, let's face facts. It is a lot of work, you know, especially for indie developers where it's a small team. And I mean, yeah, I can understand you get upset that, like, hey, you know, you have this deadline, you put out this product, and then everybody craps all over it, and it sucks because it's like your baby. But at the same time, you gotta have some sort of, like, you know, reality to it. Like, you have to look at it from a point of view of compare it to other stuff that's out there. You know?
well, and there's differences. I mean, and if you go into the indie realm, there's a difference between someone playing a game. Like, we've reviewed some RPGs, and we've played it, and there's been people who said, hey, this doesn't have the polish of a Final Fantasy. You know, you're not going to have these CGI cutscenes. You're not going to have this, you know, AAA music, but it has a good story. It has decent gameplay, blah, blah, blah. And if you come in with a AAA mindset and then you complain, that's you. But that's the thing about a good reviewer. And the thing is that if you're not good at reviewing and you're just there like, hey, how come this doesn't look like Final Fantasy? How come this doesn't look like Madden? How come this doesn't look like Call of Duty? That's on you. And then that's up to a gamer to understand that. Now, yes, you will have some fans who don't understand that either. I've had some fans who said, you know, let me try some indie games. How come it doesn't have this? How come it doesn't have that? But that's one thing. You can't use that as a shield and come out with a bad game and then go indie, because then that gives indie people who put together a good game a bad name, because indie developers are fighting really hard to get into the mainstream, and the last thing they want is to have someone come out with a shitty game and then say indie, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's okay. Indie does not stand for shit, and anyone who makes indie games would be highly pissed to have someone use that as a shield for shitty games. And so, I mean, that's one thing that I could tell you, you know, interviewing people who make indie games, they would be highly upset for someone to come out with an indie game and be like, oh, well, that's the excuse why it came out badly is because indie. No, indie doesn't mean bad. There's indie movies that are great, indie music that is great, indie games that is great. So that's what I would say on that.
and that's the thing that's funny is, like, after he released his video on the initial review of this one game, like, people watched his video and watch the gameplay, and they're like, yo, if you look at, like, they started pointing out, like, in one of the games, it's like a first-person shooter, like, when you get shot, it puts, like, a blood splatter type of graphic on the screen, and literally, like, people found it that it was, like, a direct rip-out from, like, Google Images of, like, the blood splatter, and he's like, and if you really look at it, you can see they didn't even take off all the white around the edge of the blood and shit. And, like, and it was so funny because I was like, holy crap. And like, I think one of the funniest things in looking at Jim Sterling's critique of the game was when you look at the game, like, there was a thing where he has, like, your character has a shotgun and it's kind of, like, pointed at, like, an angle aiming off to the left side, and the reticle is, like, directly up in the center, and he's like, I don't know if I should, like, turn the gun so that it's aiming straight, or do I go by the reticle, or, like, what? Because he was like, it's just so weird the way that they did that. And then the other thing that I remember him complaining about was, like, the ammunition. Was what you had to basically do to get ammo for the gun. You had to, like, equip the gun you wanted and then pick up the ammo, and then you got the ammo for that gun. So it wasn't like it was like there was specific ammo for each type.
Yeah, it's like you didn't know. You're like, AK-47, and there's AK-47 ammo on the ground. You're like, wait, do I need that? And you have to search. You're like, oh, wait, I do have an AK-47. And if you put it in your bag, you're like, wait, do I have an AK-47? I just forgot.
Oh, no, and that was the thing. It's like when you look at it, it's just like a box that has, like, a little thing, a picture of, like, bullets on the side of it. And you just run over it, and whatever gun you have, it adds ammo to that gun. That's it. That's how they kind of did it. So he was just like, you know, and the way, like he pointed out, he's like, there's really, like, no tutorial or anything, like, explaining, like, this is what you have to do. He's like, he kind of figured it out on his own. And then he's like, the other thing that he talked about was like, you know, there really is no end to the level. Like there's basically a 15-minute counter that counts down, and then once the counter's done, that's the end of the level. So he's like, so I don't know if they did it like that because like they didn't understand how to put like an exit to the level, or like they couldn't figure out in the coding on how to do it, you know.
And as far as going after like the comments like on Steam, I mean, that's just silly. I mean, really, I remember there was a movie that came out several months ago, and I forgot the director's name. And the movie was like American something, and they had like a bunch of like younger actors in it, and it did really bad. But I mean, there was some other movies that came out that was pretty decent at the time. And the guy went online and like had a tirade saying like, oh, this is why, you know, there's never original movies because people don't appreciate it. And people responded like, no, it's because it's a piece of shit. And it's like, just because you throw a couple of actors together that some people know, including like an actor, I think it was the actress from Twilight, the female lead from Twilight was in it.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, just because, and you throw in like one of the actresses that most people, especially for the demographic that you're going after, would hate. You think you're going to attract people to go watch your movie. That's why you failed. So I don't know who you're yelling at and going on a tirade about. And it's like, it's the same thing. I don't know if this has to do with just Twitter mixed with, you know, comment reality of today, that people just get this idea that, you know, you release something and it's supposed to automatically get people, automatically make money. And if it doesn't, you know, get mad. It's like, no. You know, sometimes if you don't put in the work, it's not going to make money. It's not going to be heralded as something great. And no, you can't get mad. Well, you can get mad, but if you sue and go crazy on it, you're most likely going to fail. So I don't, and going after gaming community, people who post, what do you think is going to happen in the end? Because every article about this, people are laughing at Digital Homicide because they're like, really, you're going after commenters in the gaming community? What do you think is going to happen? What are you going to do? Repackage yourself as another company 5 years from now? Or I mean, it's just a losing proposition.
This is one of those things that it reminded me, if you remember when Fez came out with Phil Fish, that he was freaking like going after anybody that wrote anything negative, you know, towards him. And it was just like, whoa. Like, and if you sit there and you look at it, Fez is a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
You know, but he just like went off the deep end on people, like things that people didn't like, or they commented that I can't believe it's taken so long to release a game, which I forgot the name of the documentary that they did where they like spoke to him and followed him around, like all the shit that he went through, which he went through a bunch of crap, like his fucking partner leaving, you know, his one of his investors like taking off on him and all, and he had to basically do it all himself and shit, and like him learning as he was developing the game, like new ways to make it look different. Then he had to go back and do everything all over again. Like that's why it got so delayed and all that. But it's like, you know, if you still sit there and look at it, that was a phenomenal game. He still like just went off the deep end because, you know, it was something that he spent so much time, you know, putting time and effort into it. And then, you know, these couple of negative comments, people like he just like flipped out and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're just not going to win with that. I mean, regardless of some people that think that we're in a world of censorship and PC, I mean, look, people are going to say what they want, and trying to sue lawsuits isn't going to win.
That was one of the things, like when I got ready to do the board gaming YouTube channel and all that, like if you look at a lot of people that do that, they basically say like you cannot take any of the comments personally. No. Like you have to take it like a grain of salt, because if not, it's just going to turn into this like thing where you're just going to be arguing on the internet, just you know, all the time going after people. Because let's face facts, there's people that will tell you it straight up, and there's people out there that are going to troll the shit out of you just to troll the shit out of you. You know, and the more you just like do the internet, the cowboy, the keyboard cowboy is, the more you try to do that shit, the more you're just going to sit there and get yourself more frustrated.
And we here at You Don't Get the Show, we're used to trolls, so you guys can bring it. Oh God, what did I just do?
Oh Jesus Christ!
You know,
shut off the comment section. Shit.
No, we don't do that here. No, we don't. Obviously, Gamer already has trolls, so we look. We're here about freedom. I mean, look, if you guys get stupid, like posting stupid links and pictures, we'll get rid of that because that's just spam. But if you hate us or what we say, that's your right. We're not going to delete that. I mean, go look at the Derek Smart post. That's Troll City. We're not deleting that. I mean, that's your right. So go ahead. This ain't Russia. Speaking of Russia, oh, look at that transition. I'm so good at this. We're awesome, right? All right. Listen, Pokemon Go. We were talking about Randy in Barcelona playing Pokemon Go, and I guess there's some places where you can't play it. You didn't go into church and try to play some Pokemon Go, did you?
Oh hell no.
That's blasphemy.
I would have gotten struck down by lightning the moment I would have pulled out the phone.
You're like, I got me a Pikachu, and next thing you know, you get hit by lightning. You're like, oh my god, I'm sorry, Pikachu, and it wasn't Pikachu. It was Zordachu.
Got you coming down.
Got you. So it's funny because at first when I saw the story and I read it, I was just like, damn, they're hardcore in Russia. And then I read a little bit deeper about the comments, and I still are 1,000% of all of this went down exactly the way it is, but I believe it based on what was said. But basically the story is a Pokemon player decided that to go inside a church and get to play Pokemon. Now, just on that normal part, he would have been okay. But he decided to actually get a video of going inside this church. And that was where things went wrong, because when he took the video and put it up online, I guess they found out who this guy was, and then he ended up on house arrest. Now, people were posting like, "Oh man, that's how are you gonna get in trouble for just that?" Well, apparently it wasn't just that he took the video of himself playing Pokemon Go in church. He also I guess he's like an atheist or something like that, and he was saying things against the church too. So it's kind of like I've never understood the idea of videotaping your crimes. I guess I've grown out of that age bracket because when I did bad shit, I either didn't have a camera or I would never bring one if I did to record what I did wrong. But it seems like if you're in church, leave your games at home. I thought about it though. I think I did remember taking my Game Boy to church once and trying to play it during those long ass sermons, and I think I did get busted because I tried to do the one, when you had the little earbuds and you would take it and you'd put it in your ear and you do one of these numbers and you're like just trying to play the Game Boy. You ever do anything like that? No, you were a good boy, weren't you?
Nah, I never did. Never went to church really.
He's like, nah, I didn't go.
I didn't even go.
I was dragged. I didn't go on my own. I didn't want to go.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure you got dragged.
Yeah, they dragged my ass to church. But I mean, what do you think about that for trying to take
it's
Pokemon to church?
It's one of those things where it's like, the initial link that you sent me where it was like, hey, it was this guy that got house arrested and blah blah blah, and I'm like, that's a little bit extreme. And now that you're saying like all of this, it's like, all right, maybe he fucked up somewhere, because like, yeah, and that is the thing is especially like I know, like, being that we went to Barcelona and all that, like they kind of had signs all over the place, like going into the churches and all that. They tell you like, hey, if you're gonna go in this area, like no photos or anything like that, blah blah blah. Like they would let you take pictures of certain things, but then that was that. And I mean, if you even like tried to take a picture of where the areas they told you like kind of know, like they'd have the security like, oh no, you can't take photos of that. So it was like, if this is Russia where they took shit to the extreme, then yeah, I could easily see where some dude got put in house arrest for playing Pokemon Go and then recording it on top of that inside the church.
Yeah,
shouldn't have been going to them areas where you shouldn't have.
It's funny because at work I've had grown people show up with their kid's phone because there was a Pokestop right at my work, and they can sit there and keep getting Pokeballs. So they'd be like, oh, you know, my son or daughter is out of Pokeballs and, you know, they're at school. So they asked me to bring the phone here and get Pokeballs. Do you know how long it takes? They said, like, is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes? And I'm like,
I believe
oh,
it's 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes
yeah.
every.
So they'd sit there and they're like, and they'd be like, can you remind me? And I'd be like, 5 minutes, Pokeball. And they'd spin to get the Pokeballs. And it's like, and then they'd walk around the office to try to get the eggs. I'm like, wow. It's like having your parents as pets now, doing the biddings of their kids for Pokemon. And then they tell me things like, oh, we went to the beach this weekend. And I'm like, oh, you went swimming? No. They went there because to catch water Pokemon and get all the Pokestops up and down A1A. This is in Miami.
That's funny.
And I'm like, holy shit. This is like changing the family dynamic where the kids are like, all right, mom, dad, whoever, we're going out. We need to hit these Pokestops. I'm like, I didn't have pull like that with my parents. The fuck is going on in this world nowadays where you're telling your parents where we're going? I mean, for Pokestops, man. What the hell's
That's
going
funny.
on here? I mean, damn.
Oh, Lord.
I don't get it, man. Pokemon, man. Soon they're gonna have signs. You know they're gonna have to put up signs eventually, telling people like, "Do not bring your Poke shit here." That's
Man,
gonna come up next.
let me tell you, Pokemon Go's gonna be huge till that freaking Super Mario Run comes out. Then nobody will remember what Pokemon Go is.
That's true. It's just till the next thing.
Yeah.
I like in his story. So I mean, he can face up to 5 years in prison. So can you imagine what kind of Pokemon he's gonna catch? They should have prison only Pokemon. Shankachu.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Oh,
Oh my
oh,
god.
Lord.
We need to ask like our social media community to come up with prison only Pokemon.
That is true.
It also apparently he doesn't have a resident, so he's staying with his lawyer. That's a good lawyer because I mean if he doesn't have his
I
own
would
residence,
say.
I assume that he got a public defender. So I mean, damn, what kind of public defender is like, yeah, you can stay in my apartment while you await trial. Like damn. And he's banned from communicating with anyone except the people investigating him and his lawyer. So
That's
I guess he can't do the buddy system. He's like, oh, I'm sorry guys, I can't battle you. Like, can you imagine prison Pokemon battles? I wonder what happens if you lose.
If you lose, you become somebody's bitch.
Yeah, it's like you lose. All right, bend over. Like, oh God, Jesus. All right, so in our video of the day, something very cool. I remember playing Street Fighter way back in the day. Well, Street Fighter 2. I did play the original Street Fighter, but Street Fighter 2 was broke it out for me because Street Fighter 1 had those, at least the one at the arcade, had that really gigantic punch and kick button. And it was just really weird for me.
That was the thing is that was the original arcade, and then they actually released the one that had like the 6 buttons afterwards. So I think that the original was with the big punch. You had to actually like punch the buttons, and then after Street Fighter 2, then they re-released the original with the 6 buttons. Because I remember with that, I remember with the big buttons is it was how hard you hit it is how strong your attack was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I never got to see the other one. I only saw the big one there, and I remember seeing like people play it, and I tried it, and I didn't like it. I mean, I liked the concept, but I didn't really like it. But when I saw Street Fighter 2, I was like, oh, damn, now this is my game. And I always liked Ken. I don't know why. It just, like, I liked red as the color, and the Dragon Punch looked cool, even though it could do one as well. And I remember just trying to practice to do the fireball. And my friend Johnny, he could always do the fireball better than me. So when we would play, especially when it came out on the SNES, we would get into battles, but he was always quicker than me on it. And he'd beat me because he'd always throw it faster. So when I saw that someone got a dog to throw Hadouken, I was like, okay, seriously? Now, of course, it's not a gamepad. It's like the arcade pad with the joystick and the 6 buttons. But they were actually, and seen the video, that they got this dog to do it. Now, there's always some did it happen, didn't it happen, because like in the commentary they say like, oh, they hear a click, but I mean the dog has claws, or nails, whatever. But I mean, look, I just want to believe it happened because the idea of a dog doing a Hadouken is great. And you see it and you're like, that's awesome. Now, what does it take to teach a dog to do a Hadouken? Was it just an accident? How long did they practice before? I mean, these are all questions between the owner and his dog. But I mean, what did you think about that, Randy?
Yeah, I thought it was like kind of cool that like he was able to get the dog to do it. I know there was like a thing where I saw where it talks about how like the clicking that you hear is actually like those little things that they use when you're training a dog to do stuff. So.
Oh, that's right. Like if you want the dog to sit, you're like sit, click, click, like that.
Yeah, you click, so then like the dog gets that repetitive, the auditory like response thing. And it was interesting that like to see like the dog do it and all that. And I remember, now that you mentioned like the old school Street Fighter, the one thing that I also remember of the original Street Fighter was you couldn't understand a fucking word when they spoke. Because all you heard like, and it was actually like, if you really paid close attention, you actually realized, yeah, they're actually reading that, but whatever filter they used to freaking have these voice actors say it, it was like, Jesus Christ. Because it just sounded like, it sounded like watching those old like Charlie Brown cartoons. That's what it sounded like, listening to them read the freaking thing.
Yeah, Charlie Brown.
Yeah, it's because I was like, Jesus, dude. But I remember like, I remember seeing the big button one. Street Fighter 2 came out, and then like it was very, very hard to see one of the old like Street Fighter 1s with the 6 buttons, because like people would get it and then it would just fucking sit there because everybody wanted to play Street Fighter 2. But it was like when I saw one that had the 6 buttons, I was like, oh shit! I'm like, you could actually play it and actually do. And I remember the one thing about that game that was like, it was very fucking like slow compared to like Street Fighter 2. Like I remember to do the fireball in the original Street Fighter, like you had to do like the quarter circle like really slow and then hit the button.
Yep.
But I remember if you like connected with the fireball, like that shit would take like a quarter of their life in one hit.
Yep, exactly. And then I like when you had the different fireballs for Ryu, where if you did the slow one, it was really slow and it was like orange. Yes. And then the other ones was like the whitish blue or whatever color. And what was it that freaking like hacked? It was like that modded freaking Street Fighter 2, the one where it had like those insane like different things, where like Ryu would shoot the double like waving fireball and shit. Oh, I remember. What was it? It was Guile's handcuffs. That was one of the craziest ones. Like Guile had this move where if you did this crazy move, he'd handcuff you, and I think it lasted like 3 seconds, and you couldn't do any attacks with your, any punch attacks. And I was like, and then they had bear fire, where it was basically Zangief would fire this like Hadouken basically, which was a bear. It looked like a bear, and it flew out of his chest. And I'm like,
the other one was
crazy things like that.
That you could like with Zangief like keep jumping till you jumped off the top of the screen and appear at the bottom, and like you do that like 3 or 4 times, and you'd grab the person and do the spinning pile driver, and he would fall like the 3 screens and you hit the ground and it would kill you instantly. I remember I had a friend of mine that he fucking broke a machine, because I remember the maximum you could do was the 3 screens. If you actually jumped up a 4th and did it, it was a bug in the game where because it took off so much life, it would cause the game to crash. So people would go to the arcades, jump the 4 screens, grab it, do the spinning power driver, just like as soon as they do the move, they just walk away from the machine because they knew it was going to crash.
Oh, nice.
Oh, my God.
Street Fighter brought us so much fun. I mean, we'd set up games like that and just have like 150 matches and just be like, all right, first one to 76 wins. It's like crazy. I love having so much free time.
I remember. I wish I still had that amount of free time. Jesus Christ. I remember, like, not only that, but the remember freaking going to the arcades when, like, Mortal Kombat came out? The fucking craziness that shit was. Where you had freaking people waiting for, like, half an hour to play a game of Mortal Kombat because of how many people were around it. And then, like, the craziness that happened when Mortal Kombat 2 came out.
Oh, yeah.
God, dude, those are the days.
All right, so since we've had a number of shows with You Don't Get the Show, we decided that we're going to add a weekly feature. Well, maybe not weekly since we don't always do a show every week, but what we'll do is we'll have this every time we have a show from now on. Now, Obsolete Gamer is based in Miami, which is in Florida, but if anyone understands how people in Florida work, we don't really claim we're from Florida because Florida's fucked up. I'm just going to be honest with you. So it's kind of like a civil war going on here. For the most part, us in South Florida, we don't claim the North, and people in the North don't claim the South. So if you notice, most people aren't going to say, I'm from Florida. They're going to say, I'm from, and name the city they're from. So, like, I'm from Miami. I'm not from Florida, okay? So when you hear about a lot of dumb shit, yes, there's dumb shit in Miami. Like, people here eat faces. We have zombies here. But, you know, there's also most of the dumb shit comes from up north. That's where we keep most of the dumb people up north. So we have this. We're gonna have a section here that we brings you stories, but these stories we think could also happen with gamers. And in our last show, we talked about how with co-op in gaming, sometimes you can either have a really good experience, or perhaps if you have that rage gamer inside you where you might yell at your significant other, it can end up causing trouble. So Randy told a nice story where it turned out great, and I was making a joke where that was kind of like a relationship test, where he ended up going back for his wife and helped her, and in an alternate reality that didn't happen. So I was like, this story, this woman ends up doing a fake kidnapping. And she did this to test her boyfriend's loyalty. And if that isn't a Florida, D-U-H, I mean, I don't know why you do this. So, okay, so this is what happened. This is in Claremont, which is up north. It's actually it's like around the Orlando area if you want to get an idea. So a Claremont gal, Jenna Elena Brooks, told deputies in both Lake and Polk counties that she had been kidnapped at gunpoint at an apartment complex parking lot. She was placed into a trunk and then dropped off at a dog park in another county, according to her arrest affidavit. Reports the Daily Commercial in Leesburg. Guess she was barking up the wrong tree. Deputies obtained surveillance video at the apartment complex and told a different story. Brooks later allegedly fessed up, telling the big fib to find out if her boyfriend truly cared about her. I guess she'll really find out the truth if her boyfriend cares, if he decides to pay the bail to get her dumb ass out. So, I mean, in a nutshell, she just... I don't know how you come to that realization that, hey, you know what? I'm going to decide to fake a kidnapping just one day. Just wake up, hey, you know what? I want to be kidnapped because I don't know if my boyfriend loves me or not. I mean, damn, Randy. What do you got to say about that, man?
That's crazy. Like, the shit that some people do, like, goddamn. Like, I laugh at freaking... When you mentioned this, like, hey, let's do a thing like that, it immediately made me think of, the Machinima guys, the guys that do Inside Gaming Daily and all that, because they do one called Weekly Weird News. And how much you want to bet that literally, like, they'll do, let's say, 10 stories, 9 out of the 10 stories, guess where they're from? Yep. Florida. And they have all these weird ass. They'll always at least have one story. They're like, oh, time to check in on wacky old Florida and let's see what weird ass news they got. And man, it is unbelievable the shit that goes on in that state. Which, like you say, it's not a matter of, you don't say, hey, I'm from Florida, or you say I'm from Miami, or I'm from Oh Lord, that's insane that she freaking went through all that whole thing.
And Trump was here too, so we had a lot of fun in Miami here.
Oh Jesus.
We're having lots of fun down here, guys. I said
Oh,
that only
God.
because I want to put Trump as a tag for social media purposes. We're bastards here at the Obsolete Gamer Show.
Gotta get them hits, baby. Gotta get them hits.
That's right. We don't care. We're here for hits. This show is not about integrity.
We gotta pay them bills. Right?
That's the other show. That's the other show. You don't get the show is all about getting them hits, baby. Controversy, hits, and offensive nature. If we can muster it up. All right, so we're gonna be back with another show. I think that this week we accomplished our goal, which is trying to stir up some shit. I think hopefully we stirred up some shit. You think we did it?
I think we did a good job.
All right, so we can. I'm gonna call up President Bush, get that mission accomplished banner, and I'm gonna put that up behind me because I think we did our jobs.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, we're gonna be back next week for another show. Hope you enjoyed it. If not, and if you got offended, guess what? You didn't get the show. Peace out.
Peace out.